The haunting introduction of Llorona, set in a moonlit Mexican village by the riverbank, where her sorrow and longing echo through the misty night. Long ago, in a quiet village nestled by the banks of a winding river, there lived a woman named Maria. Known for her beauty, kindness, and grace, Maria was admired by many and envied by others. Her long, dark hair flowed like the midnight sky, and her eyes shimmered with an otherworldly light. Yet, behind that beauty was a longing heart that would eventually lead to a path of despair and darkness. The tale begins. Maria grew up in a poor family, working hard to make ends meet. But despite her humble upbringing, she always dreamed of a better life. One day, while fetching water from the river, she caught the eye of a wealthy and handsome nobleman. This nobleman, captivated by her beauty, pursued her relentlessly, and Maria eventually fell in love with him. They married, and for a time, it seemed that Maria's dreams had finally come true. The couple had 2 beautiful children, and Maria adored them. She thought her happiness would never end. However, as time passed, her husband grew distant. He traveled more frequently, and whispers of his infidelity spread through the village. Maria's heart ached with loneliness, but she always held hope that he would return to her with love in his eyes once more. Llorona's heart shatters as she witnesses her husband's betrayal, setting her on a path of sorrow and despair. The descent into madness. One evening, as Maria stood by the riverbank, waiting for her husband to return, she saw him riding into the village. But he wasn't alone. A younger, more beautiful woman clung to his arm, and they laughed together as they passed by. In that moment, Maria felt her world shatter. The love she had built her life around crumbled, replaced by a deep and burning rage. Consumed by jealousy and despair, Maria wandered aimlessly through the night, her mind a storm of emotions. She heard whispers in the wind, telling her that her life would never be the same, that she had been abandoned. In a fit of madness, Maria made her way to the river, where her children were playing. Her heart heavy with sorrow, she lifted them into her arms, and in one devastating moment, she pushed them into the cold, dark waters. As the river claimed her children, Maria's mind cleared, and the reality of her actions crashed down on her like a tidal wave. Desperately, she tried to save them, but it was too late. Her cries echoed through the night, filled with pain and regret. In her agony, Maria threw herself into the river, hoping to join her children in death. But the river, it seemed, was not ready to claim her just yet. The curse. When dawn broke, Maria's body was found lying by the riverbank, her soul refusing to leave the mortal world. The villagers who discovered her spoke of a ghostly woman who wandered the waters, crying out for her lost children. They called her Llorona, the weeping woman. It was said that Maria was cursed to wander the earth for all eternity, searching for her children and mourning the life she had destroyed. In a moment of heartbreak, Llorona kneels by the river with her children, unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. As the years passed, tales of Llorona spread from village to village. People claimed to have seen her ghostly figure drifting along riverbanks, her long hair tangled and wet, her white dress torn and dripping with water. They spoke of how she would appear on misty nights, her cries echoing through the darkness, sending chills down the spines of those who dared to listen. Mothers would warn their children not to wander near the water at night, for fear that Llorona would mistake them for her own and drag them into the depths. They whispered that she would take any child she found, hoping that one of them might finally be her own. The encounter. In a nearby village, many years after Maria's death, there lived a young boy named Diego. He had always been fascinated by the tales of Llorona, often daring his friends to venture with him to the riverbank at night. They would listen for the ghostly cries, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. But each time, the river remained silent, and Diego's curiosity only grew. One moonlit night, Diego decided to go to the river alone. He crept out of his house and made his way through the forest until he reached the water's edge. The air was cool, and a thick fog rolled in, wrapping around him like a shroud. As he stared out at the river, he heard it, the soft, mournful wailing that sent shivers down his spine. Heart pounding, Diego looked up and saw her. Llorona stood in the water, her pale face illuminated by the moonlight. Her eyes, empty and hollow, locked onto his. Slowly, she began to move toward him, her hand reaching out. Fear rooted Diego to the spot, but just as she was about to touch him, he stumbled backward and fell, breaking eye contact. When he looked up again, she was gone. The warning. Diego ran back to the village, his heart racing with terror. He told his family what had happened, and they listened in silence, their faces pale with fear. The elder of the village stepped forward and placed a hand on Diego's shoulder. "You have been marked by La Llorona," she said. "She will not rest until she finds what she is searching for. You must be careful, for she will return." In the days that followed, Diego could feel her presence everywhere he went. He saw her reflection in windows, heard her cries in the wind, and felt the chill of her touch when he was alone. The villagers began to worry, whispering that La Llorona would not stop until she had claimed another soul. Diego's terrifying encounter with La Llorona by the misty river, as her sorrowful cries echoed through the night. The confrontation. Desperate to rid himself of the spirit, Diego sought the help of a local curandero, a healer who was said to have knowledge of the supernatural. The curandero listened to Diego's story and nodded, understanding the gravity of his situation. La Llorona is bound to this world by her sorrow, the curandero explained. She cannot find peace because she refuses to forgive herself. If you wish to be free of her, you must help her find that forgiveness. The curandero gave Diego a candle and instructed him to go to the river on the next full moon. He was to light the candle and speak to La Llorona, urging her to let go of her pain and find peace. The redemption. On the night of the full moon, Diego made his way to the river. He lit the candle, its flame flickering in the wind, and waited. Slowly, La Llorona appeared, her cries growing louder with each step she took. This time, Diego did not run. He stood his ground and faced her, his heart aching for the woman who had lost everything. "You do not have to suffer anymore," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Your children have forgiven you. It's time to let go." For a moment, La Llorona stopped, her wails fading into soft, heartbroken sobs. Slowly, she reached out to touch Diego's face, her fingers as cold as ice. But instead of taking him, she wept, her tears falling into the river and turning to mist. As she cried, the wind began to blow, carrying her sorrow away into the night. And then, she was gone. The legend lives on. Diego returned to the village, forever changed by his encounter with La Llorona. He never spoke of that night again, but he knew that her spirit had finally found peace. Yet, even today, on misty nights by the river, some say they can still hear her faint cries, a reminder of a woman's sorrow and the pain that never truly fades away. The legend of La Llorona lives on, whispered by those who dared to remember her story, a tale of love, betrayal, and the haunting echo of a mother's grief. The moment of redemption, as Diego bravely faces La Llorona, offering her a chance for peace under the moon's gentle glow. Maria's story serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us all of the consequences of unchecked emotion and the pain that can come from love turned to despair. Her spirit, forever tied to the waters of the river, continues to search for the children she lost, her cries echoing through time, a haunting reminder of a legend that refuses to be forgotten.